experience, but then again, the techniques, we have this room that's really full of infrastructure that we need in order to include also people who are not here, unfortunately, today with us. But I will present first our guests that could come to Belgrade to join us in this discussion. So Ljubomir Bratić is our old associate that we cooperated with in the, for the exhibition of Jugo Moje Jugo, Gastarbeiter Stories. He is a curator, a social worker, a philosopher. He will be the one who maybe will tell something more about himself and the thing why he is here and why do we cooperate with him for years is that he is dealing really engagingly in with the migrant and immigrant experience in Vienna for years. And in many aspects of this complex, let's say, phenomena and social group, actually. He is also here for, in front of organization MUSMIC. This is short for Museum of Migration. This is a citizenship organization, along with Elena Messner, our second guest today. They are working for years now to improve the visibility of immigrants and to institutionalize the stories and the heritage of part of history that was marginalized for years. Along with them, we have guests from Volkskunde Museum that they make successful, that MUSMIC makes a successful cooperation with. Matthias Beitel is a director of Volkskunde Museum, and his colleague Magdalena, who is in the audience, that and we expect questions from her, or any other kind of comments and additions to the story of Volkskunde Museum and their cooperation. Jussi Elma Hodžić from Sarajevo, our dear colleague from the Historical Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we also have Eva Meran, hi Eva, from the House of Austrian History. So these guests will share their experience, and I ask of all of you to be as concrete as possible and to base your presentation and stories and comments on the empirical, on your experience and on empirical practice as much as possible. So let's start maybe with Ljubomir or Elena. I mean, MUSMIC, someone from MUSMIC. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Thanks for everyone to participate in this kind of talk, because this is an important part of our work that we are doing. I will just shortly introduce MUSMIC as a project. MUSMIC is based on a lot of projects that started from the 90s, where we had a really racist reframing of Austrian politics. And in reaction to this is also connected to a lot of refugees from Yugoslavia, but also to the fall of the communism in Europe, let's say. So a lot of migrational movements, and then the reaction of racism also to black people and so on. So there was, let's say, 30 years of pre-work, pre-MUSMIC things. Ljubomir could talk a lot about this, maybe not today. And then there were projects like the Archive of Museum that Ljubomir is also part of, but also I would say dozens, thousands of things that happened before. And in 2019 we formed this project called Museum of Migration, which was just a discursive program in the beginning. Let's talk about what is missing in the Austrian landscape of museums, why and how are, let's say, migrants in the very large scale not represented or represented falsely and so on. So we had mostly academic, discursive, intellectual discourse about why don't just have an own museum and fund this museum and build this museum all together like a self-organized self-managed and self-historizing institution. Then we had a lot of artist program, exhibitions, workshops, talks like talk today. Then came Corona, and then everything was shut down. And of course, for a project like this was really the killing of everything, because it's all about collecting people and collecting ideas. And then there was a revival, let's say, 2003, last year. I see Jelena Micic in the public. Hello, Jelena. She was part of the curational team of the Wienwoche, who invited us to be to reconstruct us. And then since then a lot of things also happened, and before a lot of things happened. But what is happening now, and why we are so happy that Matthias Beitel is here, that starting maybe from a very provocative discussion that we had in the poll last year, where we invited really, I think, 8 directors of existing big museums in Vienna. Only 2 said no, they did not come, but really most of them came, and we asked them to criticize themselves, to look into their exhibitions, to look into their institutions, to the personnel structural questions, look critically from this point of view. And starting from that, we have solidary museums and solidary museum work, and we were invited from Matthias Beitel, he will say more about this later, also to move into the museum. We moved in, we are now actually moving out again, and then we will be moving in again, and so this is also part of the performance that we are doing, moving along. And yeah, at this point, Muzmik is has, let's say, three arms, we call them arms. No, it's not arms in English. 3 structures. One is artistic, one is academic, discursive, and one is really strictly political, in the sense of talking to politics. And at the very moment, we are in discussions with the government of the Greens, which is in a strange coalition with the Conservative Party at this moment. They want to really also build this museum, so we have intense discussions about the reality of that. We are also at a very low-key political moment in the Bezirke in Vienna, which are the small quarters, like, and there is one Bezirk that wants to build this museum in there, and it is also making applications. And of course, 4 existing parties in this Bezirk were for the project, which is very important to reframe, like, what are we really talking about, and 2 parties are completely against it, and those are the FPÖ and the ÖVP. If someone understands that this is the far right and the right parties in Austria who run a program of elections now, who are really anti-migrant, anti-flight, anti-people who are not Austrians. So I think that this is a very political project that we are doing, but it is also a cultural, artistic and academic project. And I think it's very important for us to be here, because it is based also, it's in its history, it is based on the question of guest workers, Gastarbeiter, and also, just to say this here, is the biggest migrant group in Austria is migrants from the former Yugoslavia. And not only migrants, also in the sense of having the monarchy and so on. So in the historical sense, there's a lot of presence from today's post-Yugoslav region. And this is why it's very nice that we were invited. So that's, I hope, short enough, but yeah, you add in your...
Ja ću govoriti na našem, pošto engleski jezik nije baš neka moja jača strana, ali u svakom slučaju Elena je rekla uglavnom sve što smo mi. Ja bih samo dodao da smo mi kao tendencija ili kao želja ili kao pokret za istorizaciju migracije u svakom slučaju jedan politički projekat. Znači, u našoj osnovi stoji ta borba za ravnopravnost i naravno da smo u jednoj određenoj tradiciji, od tradiciji borbe za ravnopravnost žena, borbe za ravnopravnost radničke klase, znači svih onih koji nisu deo neke nacionalne priče. To je osnova našeg tog shvatanja historizacije ili samohistorizacije. Tako da, kao što rekoh, Elena je uglavnom sve rekla i ja samo nekoliko reći na našem jeziku. Tako da dajem mikrofon dalje.
Matthias? I think it's your turn because your practice is complementary to what they've said and you have ongoing projects. So tell us, please, and show us maybe something more about it.
Thank you. Yes, I was asked to bring some slides. Not to mention that's us. This old grungy palais in Vienna in the 8th district. With a rainbow flag and a Ukrainian flag, and this public entrance to the park. So this museum, to tell it hopefully very briefly, was founded in 1894 and has a collection actually from the former Habsburg monarchy, quite huge collection, about 300,000 objects. And this is the backside, the garden. We kind of transferred in the last 10, 12 years the museum with the intention to understand the museum as a very public, available space. In the end, curated, but it kind of, as we were kind of small of money, more or less a precarious institution, we said, okay, we are here, we have this history, we have this collection, we have these topics, and this is our Haltung, our attitude. And then actually through the last couple of years, we established a quite lively cooperation with institutions, initiatives, individuals, and so on, to various topics. And this is a short film festival where we always have one part of it is related to the program of the museum. This was a kind of this is a part of a program, of a festival program running now, as we close down in autumn this year for a big renovation of the museum up to 26, 27. And in this program, there's about, in half a year, about 150 events. And the space is run by initiatives. We handed over the former permanent exhibition space to initiatives, and Muzej is one of these initiatives, with various topics from migration to climate and so on, and diversity. And the point is that we worked with lots of initiatives for the last years, and we dream of a museum in the future, of a museum open and co-working on topics with initiatives. So there will be an infrastructure for this, and we see ourselves like in the term of a learning institution. So learning institution means that you choose and you decide and you invite, and then you have reactions, and then you have consequences, and then you turn the institution along these experiences. Then we had a repair festival, and people, these workshops, cooperative workshops. And then very important for especially our museum, as it was kind of a big player in National Socialism and before in Austro-fascism. It's about the question about self-historizing your collection, and this is an exhibition with our collection on restitution and like looted items from National Socialism. This is something completely different. This is daily life culture topic. Some years ago, we bought a household and daily items little shop. These shops which have everything. You go there and say, "Do you have?" And this guy finds it somewhere. Yeah, and he retired, and we took the whole shop in 160 boxes. And the opening of the exhibition was empty stages, and it was an unboxing of these items. And then what happened is that these open space, we didn't inventorize these things. We will not inventorize these things. But what happened is there was such a, different organizations, groups came and they curated inside these spaces their own topics. If it was students, children, or other, so there was this possibility, and so you might from this go further and say museum as a place of possibility and so on. This is a part of our former last sequence of the permanent exhibition. This was an intervention of into a 30-year-old permanent exhibition with objects of flight, flight, as we invited in 2015 refugees from Syria as curators in our house, and they had an office and worked with curators together. And the final product was in 2018, quite strong, together with Wienwoche. Yeah, I think it was the cheapest new permanent exhibition ever. Yeah, nobody will manage that. Yeah, and thanks to the funding and thanks to the interest of Wienwoche, and it was really a strong project with hard quotations and hard opposing of objects of identity with objects of flight, and gave us the possibility for big learning procedure and also aspects for the future topics in the museum. This was the initial meeting for our ongoing program here now, to bring together all the community people to get to know each other and to open the space for whatever will happen or develop. And yeah, and this is Muzej right now in our place with their exhibition about Bescheid in English, yeah, whatever. So
rešenja, to je prevod, rešenje kao dokument koji zapravo prati život, ako mogu da razumem dobro, koji zapravo prati život ljudi koji dođu u zemlju od ulaska u zemlju, bolje ćete vi objasniti. So I don't know the translation into English, what be like, so the papers who follow people from the beginning, from entering the country to the exit.
Yeah, and then a final sentence to kind of open up the problem. In the last couple of years, like in 2014, there was an exhibition called Austrije, Austria. It was along 50 years of the Anwerbeabkommen, 50 years of invitation, the officially invitation for guest workers to come to Austria. But this exhibition was not done by us. It was done by JUKUS, which is an association in Graz, in the city of Graz. And they did 2 years later again an exhibition to this topic, which was called Under Open Skies. So it was about then the Yugoslavian guest workers. So interesting that, yeah, super to have these exhibitions, but in the end, yeah, we didn't continue with these topics. They were just kind of implemented exhibitions. Yes, and last sentence, I believe that in our huge collection there's much more. Through the focus of the topic we are discussing today, there's much more potential to explore.
Thank you, Matthias. I'm sure there will be some questions about your project. And before I announce Eva Meran, I just have to thank people from the Austrian Cultural Forum, and people from Austrian Embassy who are always willing to cooperate and to hear what we suggest and to support the initiatives that come from us or from our colleagues from Vienna. Eva is the head of the education department in actually newly established institution of House of Austrian History, which apparently is for the first time as such established just a couple of years ago. Am I right? Eva, can
you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Now we do. You don't hear me?
Mm-hmm. We hear you, and we are waiting for you to introduce your work and to share it with our audience.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, also from my side. It's strange to be on a huge screen in a room where you are far away from it and you don't see the people. So, yes. Anyway, I hope you can all understand me well. I will give you a short insight into the work of the House of Austrian History, which is, yes, as you mentioned, a very young museum, which just opened in 2018. So yes, I'm head of the education department. I basically set it up there. I'm part of the team since 2017, so I was involved in making this museum, basically. I was in contemporary arts before and worked many years at the Roter Center for Contemporary Art in Graz, which some of you might know. Yes, so in comparison to the Volkskunde Museum about which we just heard, we have a, let's say, yeah, much shorter history and a very different, for example, spatial situation. We are located in the very center of the city in a very representational imperial building, and I will give you a few photos and insights that you get an idea of the place and of the situation there. Just to start before that, a few thoughts on some basic thoughts about the House of Austrian History. So we have had the chance to make a new museum of contemporary history in the 21st century. Many museums deal with collections with a long history, with structural histories, and we had the chance to set up something new, which was very interesting, very challenging also, but also in very difficult circumstances. I must mention that we made an exhibition on Austrian history back to 1918 in a time frame of 1.5 years, not even, which is quite crazy. But we did it somehow, and we're continuously working on this exhibition as well. So, and it's not so huge, so it has not even 800 square meters for many topics, as you can imagine. I will give you some insights. In our mission statement, the House of Austrian History has three, let's say, main topics or directions that we're going to. So one is the development of democracy, of civil society, but also dealing with the dictatorships and of course, National Socialism. The second one is the construction of an Austrian identity. So we are often seen as a national museum, but we explicitly don't want to be a national museum, but we talk about very much about how this nationality is constructed. And this third one, which is also relevant in this context very much, I think, so it's the marginalization and discrimination of individuals and groups of people on cultural, social, and economic means. So these are the three main lines of our institution. Of course, and we make exhibitions, we collect, we educate, and we have a lot in the web. I will now share my screen with you. And I hope you can see that. I will just give you a few glimpses of the institution and also into our exhibition. So I said we are in the very imperial space. So this is also a place where Adolf Hitler gave a very famous speech in 1938. So we have a lot of issues of this problematic heritage that we deal with there on the spot. And we have in this exhibition, so this is just a very few insights. So we have 800 square meters and 100 years of Austrian history that we represent there. This is kind of the style of exhibition. We do not tell history along individual people or let's say white men, but along developments and certain events. So yes, this is what it looks like, and I will show you now one example of how migration, especially the topic of Gastarbeit, is represented in this exhibition. So here, for example, you can see also posters of Black Lives Matter movement. So we also collect in the present day. Here on the right, in the very back, you also find protest, let's say shields, posters from protests that took place outside our door. So we collect. Heldenplatz, where we are, is one of the most important places of civil society for protest. We go out there a lot and collect from all kinds of protests. This is in the very end of the exhibition. And before I come to the topic of Gastarbeit, here on this picture you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse, in the right towards the back there is a station where we talk about the topic of Staatsbürgerinnenschaft. So if you are officially a member of the Austrian state in connection to the topic of being allowed to vote or not allowed to vote. So this is something that affects many people in Austria that live here for all their lives often and are not allowed to participate in the national election level. So this is something that where we talk about the first votes in the beginning of the First Republic in the year 1919, and we immediately make a let's say a bridge to the present, where we talk about the present issues. And this is a place where we show the story of Mehmet Emir and his father. Mehmet Emir, by the way, most of you know, he's also now a voted director of the Muzej, the Museum of Migration. We show here the hat of his father that he used to have, and the video that Mehmet made about his memories, and also where he later confronted his parents with the story how everything went for them. I will not go into too much detail of that. And also at a different station quite close to that place, we have images from different families who, yes, are part of this so-called guest worker time. And in the media back then, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, guest workers were topic of media very often. They were also represented by very anonymously by, let's say, long lines of cars who were traveling home in summer. And we are from this, we took a different perspective, and what we show here are photos of families themselves when they were traveling to the countries where they migrated from to Austria. And also, that's what you here see in black and white, photos of the also very difficult and situations. For example, this was a place where Mehmet and his father lived for many years in the barracks, with many men in very small enclosed space. So we try to give here perspective from guest workers themselves and not different images. So yeah, this is one example. And we collect, of course, in this topic. Here you see protests. I'm giving you very short insights into different parts of our work. We don't have our collection online, just a few glimpses of it. We're working on that. What is important for us when we collect is that we go towards people to collect non-hegemonic stories, because the hegemonic ones come themselves. This is one thing I want to mention in that context. And the other thing that we have a problem with budget in that context, because we cannot expect people who have fought different fights for in many contexts, and then to give the Republic of Austria that we represent objects that represent those fights for free. And we do not have a big budget, so we seem as a big museum, but there's also many difficulties on many structural levels. So this is something we're struggling with. We also would need more budget to do that appropriately. We have on the educational level, so we have this exhibition with 100 years, many different topics, but also we try to put, that's something I want to say, migration in this exhibition as something that pops up in many spots. So it should be through the whole exhibition, and at the same time we have an area where we focus on specific fights and give them the space as well in connection to other fights for equality. So that's something we discussed a lot when we made this exhibition. How do we deal with these things? So it's important. In German, we would say Querschnittsthema, so something that comes up in all the time levels with different stories. And so we have a focus guided tour. This is that one. We also invite people to do tours in our exhibitions to show what is missing. For example, you can see Simon Inu and Walter Sauer, they gave a tour in an exhibition that we took over from another institution, and we invited them to also look at things that this exhibition was missing. So then we make short videos and we put this video online. It's many different topics. I'm just, as you can see, 28 of those videos we have. It's very broad scape. This is a photo of the workshop selection on our website, what we do with kids and young people. You can see the right top, for example, it's about borders. So what I want to say is that equal rights and how we live together in the society and who belongs to the society and how we understand that is is a topic in many ways in many of these workshops. So this is something that we take on the knowledge that people bring inside and try to include that as well. Yes, and for example, we have also one workshop for people who are learning German at the moment. It's called What is Austria for You? And we work together with those 4 young people, and they made a video with us to tell other young people who come to the museum to tell them what they should expect in the museum and to invite them basically to come. And we gave them, we had a very, yes, it was a very fruitful project that we learned a lot from as well. So this is really a short glimpse. I'm sure I've missed something, but what I want to say is that this is a topic that we are very aware of, that we try to deal with in a way that is also ethical, that represents stories and individuals in a way that my English is a bit I lost the stage, in an appropriate manner, and try to be reflective on what and how we do and how we represent. And this is not just on the topic of migration, but also in many other fights for equality and also entry in these institutions. And it's also very important to us that we have that a diverse audience feels welcome in this place and finds stories that they also find themselves represented in. So I'm sure I've missed something. I hope you have some questions, and thank you very much for your attention. I will now stop this if I find the right button for it. Here it is.
Thank you, Eva. I'm sure it was inspiring for some more questions about your work. And now Elma from Sarajevo. We did Museum of Yugoslavia and Historical Museum last year opened together an exhibition that was based on our field work and our cooperation from people from Doboj, Trebinje, Mostar, Konjic and other regions of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The exhibition was opened in Historical Museum of Sarajevo, but Elma is not only for this reason with us today, it's because a Historical Museum in Sarajevo deals with recent history, and the workers' migrations were unfortunately not the only ones, of course, connected to the history of the region and especially to Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Elma will tell us more relevant and significant stuff they do in the Historical Museum.
Dobar dan, da li me čujete?
Da.
Veliki pozdrav iz Sarajeva. Hello to all of you from Sarajevo, and it's my pleasure to give you a very short presentation of so many activities that the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina has been done in the last couple of years. But I think that one of the key questions of my today's participation would be actually to try to explain how a no man's museum became a place to hear all of these stories that are in a way absent from our society. In order to do that, I will just now share the screen with you because I've prepared a very short presentation and some images that can illustrate what I'm talking about. So I actually work in a museum which was known as the Museum of the Revolution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it was established right after the end of the Second World War. And as many other museums, it used the story of the Second World War to create a collective story. Here you can see one of the iconic, let me just, here it is. You can see one of the first iconic works of art that was made for the Museum of the Revolution, greeting all of the visitors coming to the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina even nowadays. So the first layer of the museum history is that it was the Museum of the Revolution, and it changed actually during the siege of Sarajevo, and it was officially renamed and became History Museum. But one of the most important changes actually took place during the post-war period, because the museum, after Dayton Peace Agreement was signed, the museum stayed without any support of the official government. So there is no Ministry of Culture in Bosnia and Herzegovina at this moment. And it has been an ongoing situation for more than 30 years. In that frame, it was very hard to operate the museum, not just financially, but also strategically. What stories should be researched in the museum? What is the main narrative of the building itself, of the institution, speaking generally? So, but also which topics should be explored in the museum? In such context, it was very difficult to operate. So I've noted here several key points which are important for a contemporary history museum. It's contested history, culture as no man's land, divisions in the society, and endangered heritage. So this beautiful building, for instance, belongs to one of the rare examples of modern architecture in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it's very damaged and it hasn't been restored so far. Here we have two main historical phases that are present in the museum. First of all, we are very engaged with the Second World War and the period of socialism, and the second line is the siege of Sarajevo and the last war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. A couple of years ago, the museum was actually about to close with so many problems, but we decided to open the museum space for the local and international audience and created a politics which will help us to keep this amazing institution alive. The strategy of openness reflected upon stories that should be presented or could potentially be presented in the museum. We have been very shy in implementing stories about or presenting stories about the migrations in different exhibitions that we've curated or co-curated with many other international organizations. One of the examples of how we actually started including voice of migrants was the exhibition Besieged Sarajevo, the permanent exhibition, where we had many artists that are now living abroad that took a role in creating works of art that have been presented within the permanent exhibition. But one of the brave attempts or more open attempts of actually presenting stories from that are connected with the processes of migration was the story or the exhibition called We the Refugees, implemented together with Crvena Association and with the financial support of Goethe Institute in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So here we have the image which is actually representing this limbo. It's a space which combines elements of Yugoslav design, which are very still popular and present in our society, with the furniture that somehow has the association, in connection with Yugoslav heritage, but also it's a story about people that lived in Germany during the last war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So they escaped from the war, and it was the first time that we actually, as I've said, bravely integrated the stories of migration within the permanent exhibition, within the permanent context. These stories, the basis of the story is actually a video archive, which is presented in the core of the exhibition space, and then following some other stories and objects that actually emphasize the stories that have been previously presented. We have many drawings of the children that were refugees during the war, and it's very interesting how we use this exhibition. Actually, I think that Crvena did an amazing job by giving us the exhibition, which is actually designed to be a room where we can take different activities with our many visitors that are coming to the museum. So we actually use this space as a space for dialogue, as a space where we can open the question of migration in contemporary society as well, since Bosnia and Herzegovina has been dealing also with the question of migration, not just in terms of having people in movement from different parts of the world coming to Bosnia, but also nowadays many Bosnians are leaving the country due to ongoing political crisis. And I think that this exhibition is actually being used as a platform for approaching, for actually talking about solidarity, empathy, and different types, different human values in general. One of the second attempts that we did in terms of curating migration was actually the exhibition we did together with the Museum of History of Yugoslavia. This time we actually, for the previous exhibition, we did not have any frame. So it was something that Crvena designed for the museum to be left as a space for dialogue, as I've mentioned. But here we had actually an exhibition which was presented in Belgrade, and then we tried to find the options to present this exhibition for a local audience in Sarajevo. So we actually took different types of road trips through Bosnia and Herzegovina. We had so many interesting people and guests around the exhibition that helped us to curate migrations this time. And it was quite a challenging task, I have to be very honest, for our museum team, because we did not had the opportunities to participate in similar research projects as we did in this one. So I'm really grateful to our colleagues from the Museum of History of Yugoslavia that supported us in so many ways, because I think in curating things we also should talk about just transferring the knowledge from one generation to another, transferring experiences and methodological approach. So we actually learned a lot during the process of creating this exhibition. And now I would just like to give you a few visual presentations of the exhibition and how it looked like in Sarajevo. So you can see here is a work of art by Hasan Fadlić, one of our local artists. And this work of art was actually extracted from our art collection and presented in this exhibition. I think it has been first presentation of this work of art ever, as far as I know. Here we have engagement of the local visitors and how they actually took part in this amazing project. And here is the core of the exhibition. You can see, I think that this is one of the photos from the opening. So the central part was some sort of a room which was made out of different objects belonging to different people that lived and worked as Gastarbeiters in Germany. And around them we had a timeline, also supported by many stories that we found in situ, and some of them were also extracted from the previous exhibition in Belgrade. So this official part that I've prepared for you, and I'm looking forward to hear your questions.
Thank you, Elma. Maybe we go back here. We are migrating, not that far. Yes. Thank you all for your presentations, and thank you, Elma, for introducing maybe the first round of discussion that I would like to impose on all of us. And this is the topic of mapping of the migration experience. So Elma showed us caricature, a drawing by Hasan Fazlić, which was exhibited in the context of our exhibition that we did together. So my question would be how invisible or visible is the experience and the heritage that we already have in archives and museums and the institutions, and is the first step maybe change of perspectives and then engaging with people and developing furthermore. So what are your experiences? Also a question to Eva, from the collections and archives we already have, but but it was neglected before and never shown in a new light. Is this a starting point for us as institutions? And would that be a trigger for cooperation and for next steps to go further to mutuality, which is another topic, and self-historization with cooperation and developing cooperation? So what would be the experiences, and to what extent, to what amount we think that it's already there, but just not looked for it before? You're not from the institution.
I started because I'm not an institution.
Maybe Matthias can answer.
Yes, you start, but I just want to say, I think the interesting, you can answer this, but the interesting point today is that we have three kinds of institutions, not institutions. We have this, let's say, old post-monarch museum with a lot of things to recover in their own depots. Then we have Haus der Geschichte, which has to establish a new collection and can collect differently. And then we have Musmig, which is collecting in a completely different way. So from our point of view, this is a very interesting discussion. But Matthias, I wanted to say you are the only one here. As maybe with the Bosnian Museum, you have the weight of an old collection and how to deal with it. So we would be here to criticize your approach to your collection, but please start.
As I was telling before this, the question of how to handle such a collection and how to bring it in this different perspective. I believe that, kind of talking empirically, through the last years, this open, exploring attitude of this institution, opens up a lot of missing links, in a way, blind spots, so to say. So even if it was if it was the this exhibition of Black Austria about children of Black American soldiers in Austria. It was and then you know, the Queer Museum, which was in our house for 1.5 years, and all the other projects. So and this this shows you, and then you start to rethink your collections. You start to rethink the in your databases, in these descriptions of the objects. You start to rethink the context, context. You know, when you describe an object, then you start to have a project to renew the database with additional context fields, also to fill in or to with problematic Begriffe, problematic terms. Yes, thank you. And so on. So this is a process, and then we had this, you know, adopted permanent collection with Wienwoche, and done by curators fleeing from Syria, of a new perspective on our objects, and this really changes consequently something in the institution, not as a you know, not as a in the moment, but it changes the attitude. And so therefore I think a main necessity is to think this open institution, as it most of the times it's a public funded institution. It belongs somehow together with its collections to society. So you should keep it open. We like to use the term users instead of visitors, and this goes to both sides. It goes to the public, and it goes out to the activists, protagonists doing program, having ideas, you know, coming into conversation with the museum, and again, this changes the perspectives. And now, as we here on this moment closing down the museum, which makes us sad in a way, because it's so such a wonderful used infrastructure already. We have to research. We have to go deeper in our collections for the new museum. So what we've done through the last years, I believe, are very strong. Will have a very strong impact on putting or bringing back to display our collections. And there are, I mean, all the topics are in these collections. It's about working, migration, everything. So in a historic way, and yeah, that's somehow the surrounding.
Maybe Eva would like to comment on this from a state institution, but as we heard, newly organized and with no old collections, as I understand. But yeah, this is maybe also a question for us with, as Matthias said, with old collections, and it's from in museology, it's also not that new topic. Sometimes, and most of the time, in our practice, maybe artists were the one to draw the attention and to make us change the angle and the perspective that we have. But it's also possible within the institution. And do you have any experience on it, about it?
Well, of course, I'm informed about our collection. I must mention that I'm not responsible for the collection and this kind of work. So my team is working with these objects and talking a lot with people coming to our museum about them. But of course, we have yes, it's a very huge chance to build up a collection new from scratch. With all these critical minded thoughts in your mind. And we have a very clear collection concept. So this is something that the team has been working on and which is also being updated if necessary, but where we very clearly state what we collect, why we collect it, and how we collect it. And it's also a transparent process inside the institution. So there's a meeting every week, the Sammlungsschurfix, where public history team and our director mainly also sit together, and we have very clear questions on what we take and what we don't. And we have a lot of offers. And I mean, museum work is a lot of work. It's a huge thing to do. I think we're still a few months behind in answering, in giving people a decision who offered us objects. So it's we get a lot of offers, mainly from National Socialism, I have to say. So a lot of, let's say, a third of the offers we get are related to the era of National Socialism in Austria. We made an own exhibition about that, also to make this collection work transparent. And as I've mentioned before, what people offer to us are have a lot of times to do with hegemonic stories. So now if we can, and also mostly this is also project related, and then these things come into the collection. We reach out and we contact people and we scout objects. Now, for example, we have a new project where we are collecting specifically disability history. So the Selbstbestimmt Leben Bewegung in German. So this is a big, let's say, missing link in Austrian history in many collections. So we cannot do everything at the same time, but it's of course the topic of migration is present in our collection, and it's a big and important topic. And this is an ongoing, let's say, work that the team does on that. And as I've mentioned before, an issue, because I talked to Stefan Benedikt before this talk, who is head of the public history department, and asked him what should I also, what is important to you to mention. That's what I said before, that we might seem as a huge, powerful institution, and we do that. We are that also, and we also sometimes don't. So we have a big power in what we show and what there is. And at the same time, we are a small department of the National Library with very bureaucratical structures above us that also don't always, that we have to sort of adjust ourselves within them. And also we don't have such a huge budget, especially in the context of collection, as I said before. We want to also pay people for the things they give us. Of course, if it's present, of course, we don't say no either. But it's a questions of ethics for people who have fought certain fights against the Republic of Austria for their rights, for example, and then they should donate the objects that come from that. So this is something he told me. That's something that the team in that context struggles with, for example.
Do you, Elma, have any comment, or should we skip to another?
Yes, I would just like to briefly comment on the fact that some of the objects that we actually used in the collection haven't been popular at all. So in a way, they have been forgotten within the museum collection, although they are officially part of the collection. But I would just like to remind you on an example that we had with the archive of Bosnia and Herzegovina, where we actually used a lot of materials that hadn't been part, so it's not inventorized yet. So I was actually wondering all the time why this process did not took place. And one of my conclusions could be that so this story about migrants and migrations was not part of stories about Gastarbeiters were maybe not so important and relevant, so they haven't been part of the official collection of the archive. It just took, I wanted to just share this example with you because it could make sense maybe to think about that in the future.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll hear more about, we should hear more about the cooperation. So different positions that we come from, and the ethic aspects of cooperation, and the mutuality of a process that we are doing together. So it's not only institutions who reach for help to reach to the audience or users or migrants or whether any other kind of group. We here in the museum tend to see ourselves as a community museum too. So we are doing a number of cooperations in different models. We developed quite a lot cooperation with artists, and the exhibition, The Glossary of Migrations, the glossary of the 90s, done by our colleagues from the museum, is another example of engaging a large number of relevant artists in interpreting hard political topics. But I would like to address to Musmig now as a representative of an organization and the bottom-up initiative. What were the challenges and what were downsides and upsides of your experience of cooperating with institutions, and what are the milestones and main obstacles or cliches that we all jump into being playing roles from organization or institution, and vice versa?
On the one hand, I would like to say that we are in a moment now, we are the 21st century, the whole world is globalized, everyone is cooperating, everything is international and transnational. And of course, we face a completely different landscape of museums in Austria than in the 90s. And I think it's important for Musmig to stay also in this culture of conflict and to always repeat that that things changed because of a lot of conflicts, because of a lot of fights, because there was a lot of confrontation, and it did almost never change in Austria from within, from the inside of the institutions. It was not the institutions who said, hey, let's make an exhibition about Gastarbeiter, or no, we need more black community. It was mostly because of pressure from outside. So in this sense, we have a kind of successful pressure coming from communities, but then we still have some institutions, when I'm now focusing on Musmig questions, we have some institutions who are really very open today, and things are possible that for some older of my colleagues seem almost strange. And just to put it in an anecdote, it was our invitation for the discussion of the depot to invite 8 directors to talk about what they are doing wrong in their museums, and they did it. And then a lot of them did not just do it, they also had it also had consequences, so that we as Musmig now can say we have real cooperations, even collaborations. With Volkskunde Museum it goes very deep because it's a part of this process of opening up spaces and giving away all the power of curating. But there are some stretches to this, and you can discuss it, and of course it's organizational and a budgetary problem, but the real collaborating part is working very well. And we have also cooperation with the Technisches Museum, which is maybe interesting for the first question that you put, because they are trying, they're also very big technical museum coming from monarchy times. They have a lot of collections from the Balkans, let's say it like this, from the monarchist period, and they were very much this Austrian technician museum. We are so proud of Austrian technicians, and they, until the 2000 years, they had exhibitions about the Austrian textile. And then, of course, they look very differently at their collections now, and they also look very, very closely to the wording, to the how and who and when speaks about what. And they, for example, invited us to go through their whole, I don't know how to say that in English, Beschlagwortung and the databases, the terminologic, how to speak about objects in your, and how to find them in your database, which is really infrastructurally going very deep in the museum's work. And we from MUSMIG, we know initiatives also from the 2000s where groups of, let's say, engaged academics tried to do things like that. Let's make a glossarium about how to talk sensitive and sensible and intelligent about objects, because at the end that's what a museum does. It has objects and it talks about these objects. So things like that can happen today, and 20 years ago it was a group of small activists. And so these are all processes that institutions in Austria are going through, and they are going through with this very openly, inviting not only us but also other, so these things are happening, so we have to constate that. And maybe also just one last point to the question of Gastarbeiter. I think that this is a very interesting aspect that you said, that also in your collection, which is a kind of National Museum of Yugoslavia, there was no space for the Gastarbeiter because he was the one who went away. He was not national in the closer sense. And also that in the Austrian context, of course, there was no space for the Gastarbeiter. So in this sense, the migrant, he's never not there where he goes away and not there. And so for MUSMIG, it was also important also to have this large view, which is not implemented yet in institutions. It is not only about the ones who come. It's also about those who did not come, who maybe also died, or who could not go, who were not able to come or to go. So there's a lot of, not again, national history about Vienna Gastarbeiter and Vienna Chilena. So this little small identity politics is really a larger scale of looking at the world. And I think this is something that all the institutions have still to learn. And not, so it is a fight against construction of national identity, like Eva Meran said also, that is very important. So, Ljubomir.
Kao i prošli put, Helena je uglavnom rekla sve. Ja sam htio samo da dodam da je ponovo naša pozicija. Znači, šta mi kažemo kad kažemo migracija? Mi u suštini kažemo tri pola tu najmanje. To je država dolaska, država odlaska i pozicija samih ljudi migranata. I samo sa tom rečenicom mi kažemo da je migracija nešto što granice, nacionalne državne granice stavlja u pitanje. I tu je centralni problem sa kojim se mi suprotstavljamo u ovom našem mišljenju muzeja, jer muzej migracija ne može da bude nacionalni muzej. Znači tu počinje cela priča i sa te tačke onda mi postavljamo pitanja šta znači jedna stvar, šta je stvar migracije, šta je objekat koji ćemo mi izlagati, šta znači na koji način mi možemo da izlažemo to u jednoj izložbi i sva ta pitanja. Znači to su velika etička pitanja i politička pitanja koje se tu otvaraju i na kojima mi naravno sa tim našim malim mogućnostima radimo. Ali i još bih hteo da kažem da mi iskupljamo, znači to što dobijemo, i da mapiramo isto tako mesta gde se nalaze stvari, gde se nalaze arhivi, da postoje ti arhivi, da su ti arhivi kod ljudi u podrumima, na tavanima, da su u različitim alternativnim nekakvim prostorima i da postoje jako, jako puno tih izložbi koje su već napravljene i koje se isto čuvaju po nekakvim stanovima. Naš glavni problem je i zato tražimo i zato hoćemo takav jedan muzej migracije je kontinuitet. Znači kako prevazići to neprestano počinjanje od početka, kako uspostaviti taj kontinuitet. To je znači sadržaj, to je srž toga našeg zahteva za osnivanje jednog muzeja migracije. Samo toliko.
Hvala, Ljubo. Thank you for the point. When we speak about ethics, there's also, and speak about public and private space, there's also the thing which I was also alluding to, the publicity of intimate stories and the tangibility of the material. How do we interpret what is the material which we interpret, by which we interpret migration, if we speak about unrooted people, as you both mentioned, as we know. So how do we gain trust, mutual trust, in between public and private sphere and members of society? And how do we share with dignity these stories that are not always connected to some object, which is traditional museum perspective? So, and maybe on this topic or on any other, we can also open a discussion with publics. Since we spoke a lot, these microphones just drive us crazy, so we can speak for hours, I think. But it would be really good if we keep it a bit more informal than till now. So, was my question clear? So this cooperation, specificities of cooperations in between private person who is now to share her own or his own experience with the public through an institution which has its own mechanisms of materializing, digitizing and interpreting such stories.
Again, me. I think it is really different from our perspective to talk about this concrete part of collaboration or cooperation. I know the collaboration terminology is not very nice in the NS context, but it is a whole concept behind it. It's more than just cooperating, it's really working together. So Muzej is working together with, of course, I forgot the most important, we are a collective. We are not only the two of us, we are a collective, which within this collective has a kind of matryoshka system that everyone is also being connected to a lot of initiatives and, let's say, communities, although we don't like this word. So we at Muzej, we are working together as a really decentral collaborational network, forming power through the collective, labeling the work in some way. So, of course, we have a lot of cooperations, and it is always a question, is this an individual collaboration or is it a collective project also? But within this, we have a common sense of solidarity, and so we have a lot of trust. We don't have the trust issue. But what we have is, of course, in the very moment when we come in touch with institutions, we have red flags, of course. But those red flags are referring to fights for 20, 30 years where people were hurt and people were not heard in the sense of they had to fight for being listened to. So we have a lot of discussions about this in the collective, in which way we want to cooperate and in which way not. And of course we choose institutions that already gained some kind of trust, yeah? And other institutions we choose to oppose more, yeah? In the sense of being in a kind of distant, solidary, critical approach. Yeah? So this is a very key work, and everything that we do we have to also discuss. But if you start with the very most obvious problem, people who were not equal in the sense of rights, yeah, who had no chance to be represented or to represent themselves, things in museums, they will never have the power to get in an equal discussion with an institution and to say how they want to be represented, why they want to be represented, and to be themselves. So in this sense, this will stay a problem. Who speaks? Yeah, we all know the theory. Who speaks? Wer spricht? Who is allowed to speak? This, I think, there's a lot of sensitivity and sensibility now in the discussions of museums, but still we have a lot of problematic approaches in museums where we have this alibi Aktionen, we call it, or appropriation, cultural appropriation. We have a lot of discussions about that. And it's not the same for every community, it's not the same for every group from origins, because there are people who live in much more precarious situations and are much more exposed and exploited, and others who have maybe overcome. And I think that the maybe Slavic community or South Slavic community has a lot of self-empowerment behind them. Specifically, in Austria, they have a lot of power gained through also activism, yeah, like Ljubomir who sits here, but also through intellectualizing these problems and then having the power to regroup and to fight. And other, let's say, groups, they are more vulnerable. So this is also not something that is the same for everyone. So those are the problems with collaboration and cooperation for Muzej. And I think it's also, on the other hand, a problem for the institutions that they somehow even get afraid because they could do something wrong and they don't want even to ask because then they will, the more sensible someone gets in an institution, the more they are also having some kind of fear to maybe. And so this is maybe where the dialogue has to strengthen and the openness has to be more powerful. And I think that what Matthias and other people from the Volkskunde Museum did is a very interesting step to really give away all the power and to say, now we are listening and you are doing. So this is more than a cooperation.
Thank you. Elma, Eva, do you have any comment, or should we open a discussion for public here, for our audience?
I would just like to add that, yes, making relationship, you have to mean it. You have to be serious about it, and you have to take your time. And it, in this, I mean, I've been working in other contexts in the past, and I know very well what it means to be as an institution to go into long-term relations. And in the position now, it's much more difficult in the House of Austrian History. We do it, let's say, now and then. But my position is always, if we can't do it properly, if we can't take the time to do it, let's rather not do it. If we do it, we need to do it with all the consequences. And I'm very critical about the concept of participation, how it is often used. It would mean that the people who you invite to do stuff with you, that they can also change the rules of this game. So if we do projects where we open up, we define those rules that we can't get behind, but what is also possible, to be as transparent as possible with what we do. And also when we represent people, we have the issue that we have people who are alive, that are represented in our museum. We always discuss it with them. Is that okay for you? We send them the text, we send them how it's going to be. We have people in our quiz rally for kids, you know, where then you reduce their lives to 300 signs. And I mean, we also do it with people who are not alive anymore. And it sometimes feels very weird to think, how would that person think about the way they are represented in our museum? So there are very many questions attached to this. But yeah, I'm sure we could do much more. So I would also like to do much more. But when we do it, at least we try to do it with all the dignity that needs to be attached to that.
Elma, Matthias? Matthias, would you like?
Just want to kind of develop a thought, like while talking to many museums and through Austria and further, the question what a museum should be in the future. First of all, the museum should never arrive in the future. because arriving is always the end of a story. So I see it in a permanent, developing reflection forward and back and so on. But what I believe also maybe it's more specific for this kind of museum as a culture and social museum. I think the possibility, the chance or the possibility for these museums in the future is that it's a trustworthy place, safe space, whatever you want to call it, like in opposition to a media stream in the internet. Yeah, you can have everything, you can find everything, you find all the knowledge in the internet, everything is there. You don't know if it's right or wrong, if it's false, whatever. So I think the chance for museums in the future is to be this place together for gathering, also versammeln, also to come together with people, and with this kind of still the image we have. Our image is that we are kind of there's knowledge and there is kind of seriosity, yeah. Whether if it's true or not, yeah. But then I can start, if I am the place where I wanna be, where I don't have to make the decision today I go into the museum or I go to the museum. If I develop something that means I just go there, yeah, I meet my people there, whatever, and then I have the chance to this interaction, and then I can challenge people, I can position topics, I can, the hope is then various people come together, different people come together, and I'm, with my objects, I'm this kind of platform, and I can work with speculation, I can work with knowledge, I can tell the story, how is knowledge constructed, and so on. This, what we do anyway, or we try to do all the time, but if I want to be this place, or this, then for me, it always comes to the same point. It's always this question of organization behind it, and somehow the possibility of deinstitutionalizing. Yeah, very hard word. Yeah, yeah. and then, because you're saying that because you reacted, some want to institutionalize themselves, and others want to deinstitutionalize. So yeah, this is a little bit the idea, because then it makes then the institution, whatever it is, makes suddenly a sense on top, or is an add-on value. And I believe a very important value, because we are all drifting into something crazy with all these media capitalism thing, and so maybe we are these places.
If I understood your first part of your saying correctly, we shouldn't wish for the full transformation. We should just enjoy the process while we deinstitutionalize, and while they institutionalize, and going through it together is something that we should be
because
enjoying
living or accepting or living a process. I mean, there's always that never intends to reach a certain target. It opens up for this serendipity concept. You jump somewhere and then it brings you to somewhere. And this is for other people and for communities, or nachvollziehbar. I think nachvollziehbar is more adaptive for a community, whoever this is. This is kind of, represents this certain kind of openness and stuff. And for the organization itself, it means that it's a hard training for people working in these institutions, because you have to give up a lot. You have to explore. You have to give a lot. Yeah, you have to explore. It's risky. It's not convenient. It's not a 9-to-5 thing. Yeah, you have to move a lot and everything. This is an interesting thing.
Questions, please. Comments. Something from the audience.
Thank you all for knowing more about the work, which is to me a bit already not well known, but familiar. Could you maybe, I'm interested in some future actions of MUSMIG. I heard that the initiative about the guest workers monument in Vienna is kind of ongoing. And I kind of heard that someone from your team is also involved in this. And do you have some updates on how this is going, and will it maybe arrive at the 60 years of guest workers from ex-Yugoslavia in 2026 or something like this? That would be a question, just a very small comment. I read the other day, or I saw it on social media, that actually the links actually posted that they are kind of supporting your initiatives, and the district museum in the 5th, I guess, Margareten, is kind of, I was really surprised, because you were mentioning the Green Party, and now I saw an initiative from Links that they support you in the 5th district. So can you also update us on this? I'm really curious. Thank you.
I said this in the beginning, but I was very fast, I think, because I'm not sure if this concrete political discussion is interesting for this discussion, but maybe they are. So first, Savo Ristic is one of the voted directors, as well as Mehmet, who was mentioned with his hat in the Haus der Geschichte. They are both guest workers' children, let's say, who are now artists, activists, and also have full-time jobs, by the way. So, but Savo is very successful. He was able to impose, or how to say, he has all the yes that he needs from the part of the politics, and now it's more the question of where should it be and how should it look like, and all this is a process I would really like to be part of, but I will not be, because the city of Vienna discussing in various gremien and plenums and so on, where and why and how, in which artistic way should they articulate this Gastarbeiterdenkmal, which is completely something new. We have all those monarchists, spomeniks, how to say in English, monuments, thank you. And then you have some kind of workers signed. But of course, there's a lot of guest workers in Austria. It's not only Yugoslav ones, and so this is also discussion. There's a Jewish guest worker tradition from the centuries before, and so on. So this is becoming a big discussion process, and it's one of the examples where you see that a lot of pressure and a lot of cooperation can work out in some way. And I also am only informally informed that the city is also debating this Gastarbeiterdenkmal within the frame of MUSMIG, not only because Savo is a director, but also because they were thinking about possible places. But we are talking about far-time plans in the future, which are not concrete. This is all just on debate. The second thing is, yes, we were surprised as well. We got information that Links, which is the leftiest party that exists in Vienna, tried to get this museum in Margareten, and they did it on this small scale from the Bezirk, but not only Links, but also, let's stay really in Austrian politics here in Belgrade. It's not so interesting, but okay. The SPÖ, it is interesting because that's what you see how political cultural work is. That the SPÖ, which is the Social Democratic Party, then the Links, which is some kind of, let's say, communist party, which does not exist in this way in Vienna. Then the NEOS, which is the neoliberal party, explicitly neoliberal, who have their European liberalism also in the sense of liberal identity politics, I would say, and then the Greens. Altogether, I think for the first time, were in the majority, confronting FPÖ and ÖVP, which, as I said, are far extremist, for me, far extremist right, and conservative party. So this is not typical for Austria. And we have 10 years of Green Party asking for such a museum at several occasions, and it never went through, and this time it went through. So we were very surprised about this little thing in Margareten. But the other hand was the Bund, which was really the Republic of Austria, because the Green Party in this moment is in power, and they want to empower this museum and implement it in some way. So those are some little things that we have, but we have also discussions with UNESCO, who from the let's say from the very above cultural heritage discussion comes down and gives, they write letters to the Republic what to do, they implement strategies on a very high level, let's say. They also want to improve this in their policies. And we have more of this. We have a lot of like concrete political discussions. They are one part of what we are doing. So this to be concrete and boring for the public here.
No. But you were speaking about the far future when you will have a Denkmal, a monument of Gastarbeiter, when you are institution and we are the communities, all the institutions who would like to participate in your work, and who will be the ones who like hear from us. We have a history to share. Okay, any more question? Where is another?
Thank you very much for your discussion. It was very fruitful, especially this part about ethics and participation and approaches. I'm involved in migrations in private, artistic, but also activist from perspective. So I would have a lot of questions, but I choose only one. Which is about the representation of violence and underrepresentation of violence, which is all the time present on the borders. So when we are remembering denazification process after the World War II and the way how it was done, I also remember that as a child I was facing and a lot of generations, very cruel pictures from concentration camps, and we know that people were brought to the camps to see those, to face all this crime, war crime, what happened. But today we have a lot of questions about representation, and then the fact is that there is underrepresentation of violence, some kind of hiding the violence. And I'm connecting this with one word which I acknowledged from Roma activist from Serbia, Jelena Savić, that maybe it is something about white fragility. So we can't look at the violence, but people which suffer from violence, there is no knowledge about that in a way. So there is a lot of documentation about the violence on the borders. But this documentation stays around the circles of people who are involved in research or they are on the ground doing a lot of work with people on the move and everything. So what museums can do to break this silence?
Who would like to answer first? Any experience on representing violence from Sarajevo, maybe? Or how do you cope with it, since it's such a delicate? Do you have any examples from your practice, whether to make some kind of cooperation again to help you interpret this, or you just tend to avoid? I mean, I know the situation is highly complex, even more complex than here, and just you can answer freely if you have any experience on it.
I have a lot of experience creating content for History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina and for Srebrenica Memorial Center, and both of these institutions had very sensitive stories that are dealing with individual traumas, but also collective trauma. So, but I'm very also, my biggest fear is how we educate within museums. So installing permanent content is one part of the responsibility, but I think that when we speak about these type of issues, it's very important to have in mind that we also have to use this as a permanent content within the museum and to educate. In my experience, it's very important to know to test actually before putting content in front of the audience. It's very important to test how the audience will respond to it. Using different case studies. It's very important to work with a psychologist, so it has to be always an interdisciplinary project. And I think that it's also a question of design and exposition, how we are going to present some stories. I've been involved in exhibitions that had a very like the last case that I'm working on is a memorial room for children that have been killed during the siege of Sarajevo, and then some of the stories about people that have been crossing through the woods of Srebrenica, and it's really difficult. And I would not like to. It would take us to organize a panel discussion just for that, and I firmly believe it's so needed. I think we need it more than ever. Thank you.
I can add some, or just a few words. I think the biggest challenges in contemporary museums are the representation of violence and of propaganda. So these are some things that we are thinking a lot about, and of course, in the context of the Holocaust, what a lot of people have in their minds are those liberation images of concentration camps, and we are exploring ways how to present this violence without images that sort of prolong this violence, that put victims again in a position where that they are shown in a situation which is extreme, maybe even after or before death, that they are sort of exposed. So we don't show that. We try to show it more on an object level than on an image level. For one example, more recent, let's say, violence I can give you is there were attacks on a Roma community in Oberwart, in the Burgenland in the 90s. And so what we showed there for a while was actually a piece of metal where some very racist words were written on it that actually that was actually the weapon, because the people who then touched it then led to the explosion. So this was a very, let's say, tough object. And then we show video stills from interviews with the people from this location who were, because, to give them a voice, because they were actually then the suspects at first, although they were actually the victims. And we tried to, give to show what they were accused with and what they said about that. So this is a very big topic going on. Let's say the borders of the violence at the borders is not directly topic in our museum, let's say indirectly. But it's yeah, it's very important to think very much about how you represent what in this context and whom and in what way in this context.
Thank you. Another question?
Hello, thank you. Anna is my name. I'm multicultural, multilingual. I've lived in 5 countries, and I'm an expert repat, so I have both experiences of culture shock when you move somewhere, when you migrate, and then reverse cultural shock when you come back. And I'm like this is I'm just giving a background so that you can understand where I'm coming from and why I'm asking. Of course, as previous lady said, I would also have millions of questions because I've pondered upon this a long time. But I'll just now in 2024, as the state is, the status quo as we know it in the world and globally and locally in Austria and in the Balkans, which group do you think these kinds of museums are, like, which target audience group are the most useful for? Do you, like, when you're planning your exhibitions or just like whatever events organizing, do you have this in mind, like the whole time? Who am I addressing this to? Who will draw the most out of this? And yeah, so and on maybe like on the flip side, mirroring that, which group of people comes to, like, because migrants are a very diverse, heterogenic. I mean, we come from diverse social backgrounds, academic. So it's who comes to visit these kinds of museums nowadays? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry if it was a bit wide, but yeah.
Maybe it's also a very wide answer. Also from our perspective, we don't have any defined target group. I don't like the term, as we in our position do not operate in terms of quantification of visitors and so on. But what we realize is that our public, our users, they change pretty much through the last couple of years, and it's all generation, all interest, possibility. But again, the point is, how do you perform as a place? Who gets what out of this place? So as a user, in a definition, you want to have something, and the question is, in all this, in the museums context, space, the open space, and you have exhibition, you have a restaurant, you have that, and so on. You have a space where you can do something, where you can it's very abstract. So I really wonder this change from I'm going to the museum to I'm going there because I've seen something interesting and I can sit there and can work there. I can talk there and discuss there. I can meet my friends there. And this addresses everybody, and the better and the opener and multilingually I do a program, or my invitation policy, the better it is, because then the place is open for as many people who come. So, for example, in Vienna, the big Viennese, the big Wien Museum, it's a city museum of Vienna. They recently opened up new a couple of months ago, and they started with a cost-free door policy for everyone, which is interesting because up to this time, people, individuals up to 19 years could go to museums cost-free, and now everybody can come to this new permanent exhibition in the Wien Museum, and this was kind of reflected by some other museums in Vienna, which are governmental and so on, not very positive, because the city said we afford also free entrance for everybody. So this is one little aspect of kind of to handle the interested public, but then there comes the different layers of, I believe, necessities in performing the institution and this museum. I found there's a kind of a level inside the building, which is also public with some coffee, whatever available, and then they even thought of a community space somewhere where kind of groups can do something. But then, where is this community space? This is just around the corner. It looks beautiful, but who should go there? What should I do there? Except, again, working for nothing, and maybe somebody sees it. So I think this should be very much different proposed. And there was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot maybe.
Maybe we can leave this answer with another million. Okay.
Came back. But it was it was the free entry. But no, maybe.
It's not a pity since there is a million questions.
We had a deep dive yesterday.
Did we have enough, or there is another urgent question among this million others? Maybe we can continue discussion while walking through our complex, and Jelena Micic here will guide us through her own intervention in our museum laboratory, which is quite open, collaborative, and as much as we can today. There's also a Hedgehog Home exhibition, which also thematizes the concept of home and is interesting. It's if someone present hasn't seen it before, but okay. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for participating, and our colleagues on Zoom. And I hope we move a bit towards among ourselves and towards our audience and our users, and we migrate together to I don't know to what, but to enjoy a process of migrating to a museum that's more open and deinstitutionalized a bit more. Thank you.
Možemo sad poželiti